have broken my presentation into 3 parts. We have the introduction, then a brief discussion of the project securities, i.e. bonds and guarantees. Contractors, suppliers, owners, engineers, you name it. All these parties play crucial roles to ensure the successful completion of these projects. However, naturally, for such projects, there are inherently risks. It is therefore essential to have mechanisms in place to protect not only the interest of the parties, but also to mitigate project implementation risks. Some of such mechanisms are the provision and use of project securities, i.e. bonds and guarantees. These bonds and guarantees are used on many construction projects, essentially to provide security to the employer against contractor non-performance and or non-compliance. There are several types, but for the purpose of this presentation, we'll look at 4 of them. The first one is the bid security or bond, the performance security or bond, the advance payment guarantee, and then 4, the retention guarantee. In this presentation, the words bid and tender carry the same meaning. So do the words bidder and tenderer. Let's go to the first instrument, which is the bid security or bond. For public works contracts, during the bidding process, it is customary to require interested bidders to provide a bid security along with their bids. This is necessary in order for the procuring authority to have a certain degree of assurance that bidders will be discouraged from withdrawing their bids while the bids are still valid or refusing to sign the contract if they are selected for contract award. Where there is a requirement for the provision of bid security, it must be clearly stated in the bidding documents and must be imposed equally on all the bidders. So what is bid security? Simply put, a bid security is a monetary assurance given by a bidder and guaranteed by a bank or other third party. Its main purpose is to prevent bidders from withdrawing the bids before the end of the bid validity period, or from refusing to sign the contract if awarded. As you know, any of these actions by the bidder has the effect of delaying the procurement process, and by extension, the delivery of the works, and may also lead to waste of public funds as a result of the time and effort expended in the procurement process. Here, I would like to make reference to the PPA standard tender documents for procurement of works, major contracts, published in 2019. Per clause 20 of the instructions to tenderers, a bid security submitted by a bidder shall be in the form of either an irrevocable letter of credit or an unconditional bank guarantee from a banking institution acceptable to the employer, and shall be payable promptly upon demand by the employer, provided the required conditions are invoked. So what is an irrevocable letter of credit? Simply put, it is a written agreement between a bank and a bidder to guarantee payment, ensuring that the employer will be paid if the bidder fails to fulfill their obligations. Since the letter is irrevocable, that means it cannot be changed without the consent and agreement of all parties involved. The bid security shall remain valid for a period 28 days beyond the bid validity period. If I may explain the bid validity period briefly, it simply means the period within which a bidder's offer is legally binding, and it runs from the date of tender till award. During this period, bidders commit to their bids. No modifications or changes are allowed. After this period, bidders are at liberty to change their bids if the contract has not yet been signed. Depending on the size and complexity of a project, the bid validity period can be set as low as 30 days or as high as 180 days. In GHA, it is common to find most projects with bid validity period set at 120 days. Bid securities secured on such projects would therefore have their validity period extending 28 days beyond the 120 days. Through the tender data, clause 20 of the instructions to tenderers, which I have cited above, has been amended to allow bidders who choose to submit bonds from recognized insurance companies acceptable to the employer. This is because of the difficulty most bidders encounter in securing guarantees from the bank. Where the tender security does not meet the required criteria in terms of the source, the form, the amount, or the validity period, it automatically renders the bidder's tender as substantially non-responsive, and the tender shall be rejected by the employer and shall not be considered further. The amount of bid security may be calculated as a percentage of the employer's budget, commonly referred to as the engineer's estimate, or as a percentage of the bidder's price. However, if the procurement method being employed does not permit revealing of the engineer's estimate, then the bid security can be set as a fixed amount or as a percentage of the bidder's price, and it is usually not more than 2%. In any case, in determining the amount of bid security required from the bidders, a procuring entity shall take into account 1, the cost to bidders of obtaining the bid security, 2, the estimated budget for the works, 3, the risk of bidders failing to fulfill the conditions of their bids. And the procuring entity shall fix an amount which is high enough to deter irresponsible bids, but not so high as to discourage competition. So, under what circumstances can a bid security be forfeited by a bidder? In other words, when can an employer call upon a bid security? The answer to the above can be found in clause 20.5 of the instructions to tenderers, which provides that the bid security will be forfeited, 1, when there is withdrawal of the bid during the bid validity period, 2, where the bidder does not accept the correction of its tender price, 3, where a successful bidder either fails to sign the contract within the specified time or fails to furnish the required performance security. When can a bid security be returned? In the case of the successful bidder, the bid security is retained upon the receipt of the performance security. In the case of the unsuccessful bidder, the bid security is retained upon award of the contract of the successful bidder. The final point I want to make here is that the cost of securing a bid security by a bidder is deemed covered in his pricing. So we move on to the second instrument, which is the performance security or bond. Once a contract is awarded, performance securities come into play to safeguard the employer against non-completion or inadequate execution of the project. The performance security provides the assurance that the contractor will perform the work as per the agreed upon terms and specifications. In case of contractor default, the surety steps in to ensure the project's completion by either arranging a substitute contractor or compensating the employer for any financial losses incurred. Performance securities are especially crucial for large-scale projects where the financial stakes are higher and timely completion is imperative. The performance security is normally provided by a bank or other independent surety, and it is valid and enforceable until the contractor has executed and completed the works, remedied any defects, and has become entitled to receive performance certificates after issue of the performance certificate by the employer. To explain briefly what a performance certificate is, once the defect notification period has expired, the engineer is required within 28 days, subject to the receipt of the contractor's documents and the completion of any test, to issue a performance certificate. It is the performance certificate that is deemed to constitute acceptance of the works. Therefore, the validity of the performance security extends to the issuance of the performance certificate. Clause 42 of the instructions to tenderers and subclause 4.2 of the general conditions of contract reference the PPA standard tender documents for the procurement of works stipulate that within 28 days after the receipt of the letter of acceptance or the award letter, a successful tenderer shall deliver to the employer a performance security, failing which it shall constitute sufficient grounds for the cancellation of the award and forfeiture of the bid security. Subclause 4.2 of the General Conditions of Contract, which provides for the submission of an unconditional bank guarantee, has been amended by the Special Conditions of Contract to allow for the submission of performance bond from an insurance company. The performance security provides for a maximum sum payable, usually represented as a percentage of the contract sum. When it is an unconditional guarantee obtained from a bank, it is set at 10% of the contract sum. When it is from an insurance company, it is set at 30% of the contract sum because of the higher risks involved. A performance security can be provided on either an on-demand or conditional basis. Where a bond is on demand or unconditional, the issuer of the bond must pay upon presentation of a valid demand from the beneficiary here being the employer, without further investigation into the merits of the beneficiary's claim that it has suffered loss. In other words, the employer may call upon the bond or guarantee only in the manner prescribed therein and without proving any breach or damage for the entire amount of the bond or guarantee. On the other hand, making a claim under a conditional or default bond or guarantee will usually require additional steps to be taken, and any recovery thereunder is likely to lack the immediacy of payment under on-demand bond or guarantee. This is primarily because the guarantor's liability for payment or performance is contingent on the contractor's default or breach of contract. This in turn means that the employer first needs to establish or prove such breach or default and its losses before being able to make a claim. In other words, the beneficiary may call upon the bond or guarantee only after proving a breach and only for the amount that covers the damage that had been proved. Finally, the value of the performance security may be reduced upon issue of the taking over certificate for the whole of the works. We move on to the third instrument, which is the advance payment guarantee. Subclause 14.2 of the General and Special Conditions of the PPA Standard Tender Documents for the Procurement of Works, Major Contracts, published in 2019, stipulates that the employer shall make an advance payment as an interest-free loan for mobilization, but only after the contractor has submitted a guarantee in accordance with the provisions of the contract and which covers the advance payment amount. Where the total advance payment is not stated in the appendix to tender, subclause 14.2 will not apply. An interest-free loan simply means that, unlike a loan from a bank, which is repaid back with interest, the contractor is expected to pay back just the amount that was advanced to him by the employer, devoid of any interest. Subclause 14.2 further states that the advance payment shall be repaid through monthly deductions in interim payment certificates. In practice, the deductions are commenced from the first work certificate after the advance payment certificate at an amortization rate of 20% of the amount of each payment certificate until such time that the advance payment has been fully repaid. The guarantee must be valid and must be enforceable until the advance payment has been repaid, but its amount may be progressively reduced by the amount repaid by the contractor as indicated in the payment certificates. Regulation 113 into bracket 1 of the Public Financial Management Regulations 2019 LI 2378, enacted pursuant to Section 101 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921, provides that the advance payment shall not be more than 15% of the contract sum. and must be accompanied by a guarantee from a financial institution, and the term of the guarantee shall cover the entire contract period. However, as we can all attest to, the requirements for obtaining a guarantee, especially an advance payment guarantee from a bank, are quite onerous and prohibitive. This has led to insurance companies becoming the safety net for contractors. It is fairly common practice these days for insurance companies to issue what they refer to as advance payment bonds. The question then becomes, can insurance company issue what are ordinarily financial instruments? But that is a discussion for another day. We move on to the last one, which is the retention guarantee. To understand the retention guarantee, we first need to understand what retention is. Retention is a percentage of payment withheld by the employer under a construction contract to act as security or an assurance that the project works will be completed and that any defects which may subsequently develop within the defect notification period are remedied. In the PPA forms of contract, the percentage withheld is 10% of interim payment certificates until a maximum of 5% of the final contract sum has been reached. At practical or substantial completion, 50% of the total amount withheld is released to the contractor through an interim payment certificate. The remaining 15% is certified and released after the defects notification period. Let me quickly describe what practical or substantial completion is. Practical or substantial completion simply means the completion for the purpose of allowing the employer to take possession of the works and use them as intended. It does not mean all the works have been completed, but majority of the works have been substantially completed. In practice, when defects attributable to the contractor occur during the defect notification period and the contractor corrects these defects, that cost is deducted from the remaining 50% retention still being held by the employer. The defect notification period is a fixed period of time, usually, but not always 12 months. It starts from the date of practical completion and during which the contractor has an express contractual right to return to the site to rectify any defects. A contractor may seek a retention guarantee in lieu of deducting a cash retention from interim payments throughout the works. The reason being that the absence of cash retention increases the cash flow received in interim payment certificates for the duration of the project. Where a contractor is to provide a retention guarantee, such provision must be expressly stated in the contract document. Retention guarantees are invariably on-demand instruments, as the employer will want to be able to call upon the bond as if it were cash, akin to the retention that would otherwise have been held by the employer. The purpose of the retention guarantee is to assure the employer that there are sufficient funds for the remedy of any defects and for the contractor to pay attention to the quality of the works performed so as to avoid or even eliminate the defects. The retention guarantee shall be halved upon the employer's taking over of the works. However, such guarantee still has to be valid until the end of the defects notification period. Retention guarantees per industry standards and by virtue of the standard form of contracts used in the road sector is a guarantee issued by a bank. Now we move on to the last leg of the presentation, which is the evaluation of project securities, the key considerations. And these are posed in the form of questions. The first being, is the instrument in accordance with the requirements of the contract? That is the conditions and form. Is the instrument, is the source legitimate? That is the guarantor licensed and of good standing? 3, is the document authentic? 4, is it valid? 5, is it adequate? 6, what is the financial position of the guarantor to underwrite the risk? 7, does the guarantor have the ability to meet the guarantee in the event the risk materializes? Let's all ponder over these. Thank you very much.